Glacier Girl is perhaps the greatest restoration story in aviation history. Her useful life seemingly ended on July 15, 1942. The P-38 was one of an 8-ship squadron on its way to the fight in Europe when she had to ditch on a desolate Greenland glacier in bad weather. There, the airplanes were left for lost. Though Glacier Girl's voice went silent on that day, pilot, adventurer, and aviation executive Pat Epps could still hear her. Across 3,000 nautical miles, through 4 decades, and from under 268 feet of ice and snow that buried her, Glacier Girl kept calling to Pat Epps. Epps heard about Glacier Girl and the so-called Lost Squadron on a trip to the Arctic in 1980. In 1981, a customer at his Atlanta FBO expressed an interest in owning a P-38. Pat again thought of the Lost Squadron and called his fellow friend and aviator Richard Taylor about taking another trip in search of the planes.
And we'd go up there and we'd tell everybody about how we were just going to brush the snow off and put gas in them and we're going to fly them off. And we believed that for 5 expeditions. We didn't know it, but the Icelanders, with their subsurface radar, had found the planes. It was '88 before we hired those Icelanders to come over. At that time, we operated with a Cessna 185. We spent the 11 years, and in 1990, the planes are crushed, and we're not going to recover anything. But you go back to Atlanta, and after 6 months or a year, you go over to the downwind restaurant, you have a glass of juice, and start talking about how strong the fighters are. They're built out of tougher metal. They're not crushed. And so in '92, we recovered this P-38 from 265 feet down.
So it was that exactly 70 Julys after Glacier Girl bellied into a desolate Greenland glacier, she was here to celebrate with Pat Epps and his partner in the Greenland Expedition Society, Richard Taylor, and Roy Schaffner of Middleborough, Kentucky, who infused capital and determination into the project in early 1992. Bob Carden, who gave 10 years of his life to restoring her. Steve Hinton, her test pilot. Don Brooks, who helped finance the recovery, and her current owner and caretaker, Rod Lewis. Perhaps more important, she was here as a tribute and a memorial to those nearly 250,000 pilots and airmen who gave so much to save the world from the darkness of the Second World War. In that sense, the roar of her engines was an anthem of freedom for all to hear.